Good afternoon, everybody. This is Don again. It is Sunday afternoon on Memorial Day weekend, around 2:30 in the afternoon. It's kind of nice out here, kind of cloudy, just like it was yesterday, maybe a couple of degrees warmer than it was yesterday. That's why I don't have a jacket on today. I had to move to sort of a different area of the park today because there's a lot of picnics and parties going on, some music playing, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to find a quiet spot to make this video. And today we're going to talk about what you watch on TV, or at least what I watch on TV, and why I watch it, and why I avoid watching certain other things. And maybe it's not completely proven, what watching certain TV does to you, but it's a certain feeling that I get that I want to talk about. So let's begin. I remember back probably 1978, I went to see The Deer Hunter in the movies. I was 17 years old. I went to see it with my 15-year-old girlfriend at the time. We drove to the movie theater, probably like 20 minutes away. And I remember the ending of that movie being so incredibly sad. I'm not sure how many people have seen it. I don't want to do too much of a spoiler alert. Probably many people have seen that movie. It's a very popular, I think it won Oscars, this kind of thing. But the ending of the movie was incredibly sad. And I remember my girlfriend and I driving home. I drove her all the way back to her house, which was 5 minutes further away than mine, and dropping her off. And we didn't say a word. I swear we didn't speak a word to each other the entire time until I got her home and dropped her off in her driveway, because the ending of that movie was so incredibly sad. Now, a lot of that movie was also quite violent. There is a scene where they play Russian roulette, and it turns into a very violent scene. And, it's something to think about. And the point I'm talking about here, the point I want to make today, is how watching violence in TV or movies affects your vibrational frequency. And what does it do to you biologically? And as I said, there's a lot of studies on this subject. None of them are really conclusive. At least I did some research before I came down to the park to look at what it does to your vibrational frequency. I couldn't find anything that's really like more than just a discussion. The vibrational frequency isn't something that's taken seriously by scientists, this kind of thing. So it's not something that's actually going to be studied. And I guess maybe it might be hard to measure as well. That's maybe why they don't take it too seriously. But at the same time, I think it's real, and I think there's a lot of people out there who think it's real as well. And remember that every thought that you have affects your vibrational frequency. It affects the vibration that you're putting out into the universe. And watching violence in movies and TV will absolutely, in my opinion, lower your vibrational frequency, because you're being shown images of death and dying and suffering and, just violence. And I think there might be a point at which the violence becomes the point of the movie itself. And I think that's what you need to avoid. And I think I used the example of The Deer Hunter because The Deer Hunter, yes, has some incredible violence in it. And I don't think the violence is the point of the story. Now, again, there's probably a lot of opinions on this, and there's probably a lot of TV shows out there that I have not seen that are quite violent, but may also tell quite a good human story. But the question is, why do those shows become so much more popular, and why aren't there shows on TV that just depict normal human interaction? Maybe it's because that doesn't sell. And the question is then why? Why doesn't that sell? That's a very interesting question. I remember when I was a younger man, I remember getting out of the library. I don't know why I did this. I had a period of time where I read a lot of plays. I bought some, I think it was in a book club, and I bought some nicely bound books of Shakespeare plays. I remember I read Romeo and Juliet. I think I read A Midsummer Night's Dream. I think I read Titus Andronicus. And those plays, there are some violence in those plays. Obviously, Romeo and Juliet commit suicide. Romeo and Juliet commit suicide, but the violence is not the point of the story. That's why. Let me contrast that with another movie. Hold on. Let me go back to talking about the plays. The plays were not just human drama, so well written, so engaging. Like The Iceman Cometh was a Eugene O'Neill play that I read. Morning Becomes Electra, another Eugene O'Neill play that I read. Long Day's Journey into Night, a third one. These don't require violence to be engaging. They're page turning without having that grip on you that the violence does. Violence can become mesmerizing at times, and I often wonder why it does that to us. And I've made a sincere effort to avoid watching programs that I feel where violence is the main form of entertainment that's being shown. So going back to what I was about to say a minute ago, I remember in 1987 when Lethal Weapon came out, and I was like, I saw the TV I saw the advertisements on TV, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to see that, And I remember some of my friends went, and they were like raving about it, how good it was. And I didn't see it in the movies, but I saw it a few years later for the first time. And it's a good movie, you know what I mean? But there's really no story there to be told. There's no real character development there that shows you something that's a possibility for yourself. You know what I mean? You don't learn anything from it about behaviors you could engage in to improve yourself, right? So that, to me, is like the definition, or one of the first movies that I remember being so violent that the violence was the point of the movie. And obviously there's so much of that around today, and I just avoid it because I just don't think that's good for me. And whether or not that's good for you is something you have to decide for yourself. But have you ever thought about how it affects your vibrational frequency? Remember, let's talk about what your vibrational frequency is for a moment. Every thought that you have, okay, you are a vibrational being. And, there's been recent studies out there talking about consciousness and what it is, and the trees that are behind me and in front of me, and the river, and the birds, and the plants, and the flowers, and the squirrels, okay? They're all conscious, okay? This is sort of a new theory talking about consciousness. Consciousness doesn't originate inside your mind, inside your head. Consciousness is something you receive from the universe. There's a new recent theory saying that the universe itself may be a conscious being, and that's a fantastic concept to think about. And it sounds reasonable to me if you think about it, because I've always felt and I've always believed that this universe has to be a benign place. Even though you can, if you look through the James Webb Space Telescope, you can see evidence of ancient occurrences that look like they were violent and everywhere. But here we have, in our little corner of the universe, this little planet that we live on, we have a benign place to live and grow and to enjoy. And I don't think that happens by accident. I think there has been, whether you want to call it a creator or some guidance, some divine coincidence, whatever it is, I think there is something, some benign force that allows this all to occur. And I think there's a consciousness out there that says, okay, let these people be in this place. So you, as a person, this gives much more credence to the concept of a vibrational frequency, because you as a person emitting vibrations with every thought, are also receiving vibrations every second of the day. You know, there are molecular microscopic particles passing through you all the time that you don't know about, okay? This has been proven by science. There's also, if you want to believe it, there's also a consciousness out there that's passing through you at all times and leaving its impressions upon you, a vibrational impression. So that, as part of the internal environment that you're in control of, or that you are capable of controlling, you then have the ability to recognize this and make this a part of your control mechanism, okay? What passes through you, you probably unconsciously, you don't understand, but by being aware of the possibility of controlling your internal environment, you can then regulate what vibrations you release into the divine consciousness that exists out there. And then that divine consciousness then interacts with you by matching the vibration which you emit. So, getting back to our main subject here, if you are watching violence on TV and you are experiencing the vibration that passes through you without you even knowing it, you are probably, most likely, lowering your vibrational frequency without being aware of it. Now, let me give an example that happened to me the other day that made me think about this. The Knicks were on TV, okay? Now they've lost the first 2 games of the series, okay? Both at home in Madison Square Garden with the crowd behind them. And the first game was Wednesday night. And it was such a close game. It came down to overtime, like the last possession of the game. And it felt like the Knicks were going to lose. I could feel it. And I was getting really upset because they were ahead by like 14 points with like 2 minutes left or something like that. It was ridiculous. The way they lost that game was disturbing. And I went to bed angry. And my wife was talking. My wife is, doesn't even speak English all that well, but she can read my moods. And, basketball is a passionate thing for her. She likes watching it, but she's not passionate about any one team. She just likes the entertainment of the basketball game. But for me, I've been a Knicks fan since like 1973. And watching them lose in that fashion pissed me off. And that's not even that violent. It's controlled violence, okay? But the manner in which they lost pissed me off. And I went to bed angry. And my wife looked at me while we were laying next to each other before we fell asleep and saying, "Why are you angry?" And it's a really simple but a very powerful question. Why was I angry? So think about the effect that violent images can have on you, violent scenes in movies can have on you over the long period of time. Now, the studies say that they desensitize you, this kind of thing. The studies say that violent video games desensitize you. So it doesn't really matter where the images come from, okay? The effect that it has on your vibrational frequency, I think, is the more important factor to consider. If you are going to be a conscious being, then you have to be able to sit there and say to yourself, okay, what am I going to allow myself to view? How am I going to protect myself from letting my vibrational frequency get lowered by these programs? And I think I've taken some steps to ensure that I don't let TV or movies affect my vibrational frequency too severely. Funny, my wife and I should say just my wife, she won't watch anything twice. She'll watch a movie, and if it's too violent, she likes action movies, but there are scenes in some movies that she just will not watch. A good example is Braveheart. It's a good movie. The violence is not the point of the story, but some of those battle scenes on those fields in Scotland are incredibly violent, and she just will not watch that. She makes me turn it off. or she just walks away or starts looking at her phone, this kind of thing, she will not subject herself to that kind of violence. She'll watch some of the action, but the story, she's intrigued by the characters, the way they're written. But when it comes down to that senseless battle scenes of violence, she just will not subject herself to that. And she's not even necessarily the kind of person who understands the vibrational frequency. She just knows that it's not good for her to watch that kind of thing. And how do you, as a person, govern your own vibrational frequency? By what you watch on TV. Now, what I watch on TV these days, besides, or I should say, instead of violent TV, I watch comedy. I mean, I don't watch that much TV, to be honest with you. I do watch TV, but what I watch is mainly like reruns of The Big Bang Theory, which is like my favorite show of all time, because it's funny and the characters are real and there is no violence. You know, it's comedic violence, if anything. And nature shows. That recent program, The Americas, with Tom Hanks, was a fantastic show. I really enjoyed that. My wife and I watched that every single time. I have all of them recorded, but of course, we probably won't watch them again because she won't even watch that more than one time. As soon as she recognizes that we watched it once before, she has a Chinese word that says Kangwala-don. She just dismisses it. She won't watch it one more time. Forget it. So I don't even bother to try anymore. And then the other thing that we watch is sports. And sports is controlled violence. And of course, there is violence sometimes in these sports. These players get into fights with each other. Why do people cheer when there's a fight on the hockey rink? Why do people cheer when there's a violent crash? Why do people go to NASCAR to see the violent crashes? What does that satisfy within them? That's a very basic question, a question you should ask yourself. I used to watch that kind of stuff, NASCAR. I haven't watched it in years. I just don't understand it anymore, the need for that. I don't celebrate when there's a car crash, when there's a fight on the hockey rink. They've been trying to weed out fighting from hockey for years. They haven't been able to do it. And I remember when they had the Four Nation face-off earlier this year. When was that? Like January or so? Maybe February? They had the Four Nation face-off around the time of the hockey All-Star break. And the first game, USA versus Canada, I mean, what happened? I think they all dropped their gloves and started fighting right from the get-go. I mean, or within like 1 minute. I think we had 3 fights in 12 seconds or something like that at that hockey game. And, you know, people watch it just for that. And I just don't understand that. There's no, what good does that do? For me, that takes away from the entertainment value of the game itself. It was a great game. The hockey game was great, but the fights serve no purpose in my opinion. What is the point of watching these people bash each other? It doesn't make any sense to me anymore. Maybe just because I'm old now. Who knows? Maybe that killer instinct is gone. But I don't even recall thinking that was great even when I was a younger man. Those fights in hockey games. So this is my whole point. What do you guys watch? And why do you watch it? Have you ever given that any thought? Or do you just come back to your TV every week watching the same shows? I know there are loads of shows on Netflix about, that recent one that's just come out, The Last of Us, and I can't remember Breaking Bad, and that the other one, I can't even think of the name of it right now. It had a spin-off and everything. It was all about, the last of the human race trying to survive the zombie onslaught, this kind of stuff. That has no appeal for me whatsoever. And maybe Hollywood would hate me for saying this. Who knows? But Hollywood sells. Hollywood makes what sells. And people buy this stuff, and people view this stuff, and people get hooked on this stuff. I just don't see it. I don't think you're doing your vibrational frequency any good by watching that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's healthy. I think you would be far better off watching stuff that's more uplifting. And there are not many movies out there that are uplifting these days. Some of them are. If I could think of one or two, I would say, but there aren't that many that are. And that's a shame, because there's plenty of good human drama stories to be told without the necessity of including bloody scenes of violence and explosions and everything else. So I just hope that people think about this. Take this kind of seriously, because there is a definite change to be made in your behavior, a definite effect that would have on you, I believe, to stay away from violence, movies and TV shows that are violent for no reason. One last example I'll leave you with. The show Law and Order. Why has that show been on for such a long time? And I don't know whether it's because of this particular reason, but what happens in Law and Order, you never see the crime. You never see the actual violence. You see the aftermath. You see the bloody scene when the cops walk in, this kind of thing. You know what I mean? The phone call is made, someone's panicking, someone's screaming on the phone, this kind of thing. Come here, this location, and there's a body laying on the ground. Okay, and then they have to figure out exactly what happened to that person. You never actually see the actual violence. And I think that might be one of the secrets of why that show has like 4 iterations and it's been running for 20-something years. Who knows? But that's just my observation. Whether or not I'm correct or not, I have no idea. That's just an observation. But you see, that's violence that is understated. It's not the point of the show itself. The crime occurred, and then these cops and these lawyers have to set out to solve the crime and prosecute the criminals. And then, you get that great feeling at the end when, yes, they solve the crime and the guy is convicted and he goes away, this kind of thing, and you can feel great about that because there's one less dangerous person on the street. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I don't see any necessity to watch violence, senseless violence, where the violence is the point of the story. And I hope everyone considers this point and takes it, seriously. I thank you all for listening. It's been a great day. It's Sunday afternoon. Peace, happiness, and prosperity. Like, comment, and subscribe. And enjoy yourselves.